next speaker. So like our other gentleman who was a pilot, I want to find out stuff about the speakers, you know, if they do things that are different. And so I said, tell me something cool about yourself. And he said, hold on a second. I wrote it down. Hold on. Here it is. This is exactly what he said. Me, Mr. Alex, tell me something cool about yourself. I don't know. My question was, how could a dude with blue hair not have anything cool, right? But then you saved me. You saved me by coming up with something not cool. We are an avid board gamer.
Yeah.
We then went on a 20-minute blah, blah, blah about the type of board games that we play. Literally, he lost interest in his own conversation. So I'm hoping that your computery talk is awesome. What's your topic? Stop saying What's your topic?
JavaScript for JavaScript developers. It's Vue for React developers.
Man, clap for this dude.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. As he said, I'm Alex Riviere. I am a senior web developer at Trena. We're a creative web design or creative branding agency. Everything that I'm about to say in this talk is not the opinion of Trena. It is my opinion and my opinion alone. I am here to piss you off. We are going to talk about Vue for React developers. And to sort of put it in perspective for you, I am a Vue developer. I am not a React developer, so I have very strong opinions about this topic. Also, I help organize PyATL in Atlanta, and I also help organize the Atlanta Vue meetup. And I'm part of a podcast called Enjoy the Vue. So, in case you had any wonder about whether or not I like Vue, maybe. So let's talk about React. React is popular. Who here has heard of React before? Pretty good, pretty good. Who here has heard of Vue before? About the same number. Who here has used React before? Pretty good. Who here has used Vue before? Less people. All right. Who here has never heard of React or Vue before? Y'all are going to be so lost. I am so sorry in advance. So React is popular. It's one of the most popular front-end frameworks. And the reason that React is popular is because it is popular. You see, companies start using React, so people learn React, and companies see that there are React developers, so they hire React developers and then need more React developers, so they create jobs for React developers, so people learn React so that they can fill the React developer job, and it's a cycle, right? So React is popular because it was in the right place at the right time and had a giant mega corporation behind it pushing it pretty well. Vue, on the other hand, is open source and doesn't have quite the marketing team. This could have happened to any framework, but it happened to React. So React is popular because React is popular. Now, in the Vue community, we have feelings about this. But one of the questions that comes up regularly, and this one literally happened the other day, from Anthony Fu, who's a contributor to the Vue ecosystem, makes a lot of tooling, really great stuff. If you aren't following his work, do, because he's putting out some amazing stuff. It is fantastic. But he asked this question the other day of what is preventing you as a React developer from using or even trying Vue? And generally, the responses fell in sort of very predictable ways. And this next tweet just sums up those responses perfectly. No JSX, no ecosystem tooling, the readability, and jobs. Now then, I already touched on the topic of jobs. React is popular because React is popular. That's true. I'm not going to fight that one. Readability, that is subjective. Not going to fight that one. Ecosystem and tooling. We have an ecosystem. Vue has an ecosystem. We just don't need 9 different ways to do styled components. It's built in. No JSX. This is the one I'm fighting. This is false. This is not only false, this has been false for years at this point. You can do JSX in Vue. So, because of that, we're going to convert a React component into a Vue component here. Now then, I am not actually going to show you a demo of this. I'm not going to show it to you like the actual application. I'm going to talk you through the application. It works. I have built it. It exists in a GitHub repo. I can link you to that if you really want to see it and be like, prove that it works, right? It works. I've also run this code that I'm going to be showing you by some React developers. They corrected me on a few things. I didn't listen to them. So, with that, we're going to make a to-do app because front end. The 3 things that our to-do app needs to be able to do. 1, we need to be able to store an array of to-do items. 2, we need to-do items that can be marked as done and then disappear when they are marked as done. But then the last thing that we need is we need to see them again and make sure that we actually did them. So 3 things that it needs to be able to do. We're tracking various bits of state. This is perfect for a front-end React application. We're going to be storing all of this in memory. If you were to refresh the page, it would disappear for forever. All right, so this is our React component. It's called app. I'm using Vite for this. If there is something that is specific to create React app that you can do, I'm not using that. Deal with it. The first thing that we're going to want to be able to do is we need to import use state from React, right? And we're going to import our CSS into our JavaScript for some reason. The next thing that we need to do is that we need to be able to create a to-do item. This code here is just sort of my way of being like, I'm making a fresh to-do item. It has a unique ID on it so that I can put it in an array of things and then loop over it and have a unique identifier so that we can deal with it later. Done, and then it's also going to get a string as item. If you wanted to, you could do this in TypeScript and have the type safety that was just talked about in the last talk. I'm not, because I'm not a TypeScript developer, and JavaScript is just a little bit faster for me. The next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to define our component. I like to use function. You can also use const app equals paren equal sign angle bracket curly bracket to define your function. That's fine. Either works. I like it this way. So here are the 2 pieces of state that we're going to track. We're going to track to-dos and show archived, and this is the first instance where you can tell that I am not a React developer because I named the functions that change the value of things update to-dos and update show archived instead of set to-dos and set show archived. This is the thing that people corrected me on, and I said, eh. So we're going to track an array of to-dos, and we're going to track a Boolean for whether or not we are showing our archived to-dos currently. Next thing we need to be able to do is that we need to be able to add a to-do item to our list. And in order to do that, we create a new to-do item with the string that we have entered in somewhere. We're going to then deconstruct our array of to-dos into a new array and add the new to-do item at the end of it. Because that's how you have to do it in React, apparently. The next thing that we also need to be able to do is that we need to be able to mark a to-do item done. In order to do that, we mutate the current state of to-do, which a lot of people are going to scream about, I'm sorry. And then we're going to find the index of that to-do item. We're then going to replace that current to-do with a fresh version of it so that React knows that it's the thing that updated. Then we're going to once again create a new array of to-dos from our original array by spreading it into a thing and update our to-do list. Great. That's a lot to do one thing. Next, we're going to get our to-do items. Now, I have chosen not to hook onto an input and try to manage the state of an input. I'm just saying, here's a form. It has an input. It has a button. When you type something in, you press enter. It submits. It's great accessibility-wise. This is great. You're not having to deal with it. We're just catching a submit event. This is how I recommend doing things like this. We're going to prevent the default thing from happening. We're going to get the form data. We're going to get our item input and create a new to-do from it. And then we're going to reset the form. That's all this function does. This one stays the same throughout. We're probably never going to look at this function again. So just remember, handle submit is there. Next, we have our template. Because JSX is a templating language. Fight me. JSX is a templating language. It has a compile step. You cannot drop this into a JavaScript file and put it in a browser and have it work. You have to run it through a compiler. Therefore, it is a templating language. That is all I have to say about that. With that, the next thing that we're going to look at is our form. On our form, we have an onSubmit event that we're listening for. We're giving it our handle submit function. You'll also notice that in JSX, I have to use class name instead of class because JavaScript. So we're doing class name. Also on our label, I have to use HTML4 instead of for. Once again, because JavaScript? It's a thing. I have opinions. You probably could tell. Anyway, this is a form. It's great. It handles our submit event. Done. Next, we're going to have our input it has a type of checkbox, which I can't, for some reason, I can't give that a string. I found that out. I don't know why. You have to pass it like that. I don't fully understand that. Once again, Vue developer, not a React developer. On change, we want to update our show archive to be the other value of it, right? So we're just going to toggle it there, essentially. And then we want to set checked, which is the checked value for a checkbox input type of being either checked or not checked based on the current value of show archived. And then we have the label that goes with it. The last thing that we're going to do is that we are going to display our list of to-do items in this extremely readable format that definitely doesn't have any readability problems whatsoever. We're going to filter the list by show archived and whether or not we're showing the ones that are done or are not done. We are going to then map over it and return a list of list elements that are ID'd based on the to-do ID. And if we are showing the archived ones, we are not going to display a button that allows you to mark it done because it's already done. If we are showing the ones that are not done, there is a button there that allows you to mark it done. And then we export default app. Cool. Can we all agree that this is a React component and that this is a decent example of how to use state in React? Yeah, OK, cool. So let's convert it to Vue now. So there's a lot of people who go, I don't like Vue, because you have to use a templating language. Already covered that. JSX is a templating language. Not a good excuse. But let's convert this to Vue. So first thing that we're going to look at is our imports. Our imports are going to change a little bit. The top of the file is going to change a little bit. Now, Vue has its own version of JSX. I'm not using that here. I'm using the default React flavor of JSX. We don't have any fancy features in here. To change this to be able to do Vue, and specifically Vue 3, we add a compiler directive at the top, @JSX. By default with JSX, it replaces your angle bracket tags inside of your JavaScript with react.createElement. What this directive does is that it says, instead of doing react.createElement, use this name, h. And then we import h from Vue. H is Vue's version of React create element. It handles the creation of a component or an element or whatever, and has, in Vue 3, essentially the same syntax. We're also going to import define component, ref reactive computed. These are all things, we'll get to them. Next, we're going to change our function definition. It's not just going to be function now, we're going to wrap it in a function call to define component. So what this does is that this says, hey, this is going to be a component. It wraps it in some extra stuff. And because it is a function, this function gets run when the component is created. Unlike React, which gets run every time it gets rendered, this is only going to get run once. This is very important for later on. Remember that. The next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to update our state. We're not importing useState anymore because we're not using React. Instead, we're going to use Vue reactive values. Vue reactive values look like this. The to-dos are going to be a reactive object. Reactive is a function that you can call to create a Vue reactive object that will track any object. So you can put a normal object in there. You can put a class, like a new instance of a class thing in there. You can put an array in there because an array is an object. This is not for tracking primitives like strings, numbers, booleans. This is only for tracking objects. To track primitive values like strings, booleans, numbers, you use ref. What ref does is that it wraps that value in an object and gives you that value at dot value. I've been saying value quite a bit at this point. So if we want to get the value of show archived, you would do show archived dot value, and it would give you the current value. Great. Next, whoa boy, that is not happy. All right. Next, we're going to make a computed value. So in our previous example of the React app, we needed to filter our list of to-dos and say, hey, when the show archived value changes, update this list to only show the ones that are either archived or are not archived based on our current condition. We're going to put that in a computed value. What computed value does is that it returns something that's kind of like a ref. You're able to access that value on dot value. And we're going to have our filter statement in there. Anytime that our array of to-dos updates, this will update. Anytime that show archived will update, this will update. We don't ever have to touch it again. It just updates, and we have a nice interface for that. So it's sort of a shortcut for defining this. Now, what's nice about computed, and it doesn't work in this instance because I'm looping over an entire array, so every time that we do something to it, it recalculates it. But typically, if you are doing something where you are doing a Boolean value, right? You're just doing a ternary statement like show archived question mark thing colon thing, right? Like you can do two different values based on it. It would cache that. So it automatically caches your value if it's a simple enough thing where it can, if it's a deterministic thing where it can actually cache that value. So don't put things in here that call APIs because it may not call an API, and there's not a way to force that to re-trigger. So there you go. That's a computed value. It's a Vue thing. They're super cool, super great. Use them if you use Vue. The next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to add a new to-do item. So if we remember the React code here, it is very odd because you have to deconstruct your array and then rebuild your array with a new thing in it. In Vue, you just use built-in array methods. So we just push it on there, and now you've updated your array, and everything re-renders, right? A little bit simpler. You just use JavaScript instead of having to like completely deconstruct everything to reconstruct everything. The next one, this is my favorite one, actually. This is my favorite change. So remember in React, we have to do all of this stuff to make mark done work, right? We have to like set a new value for done, and then we have to like deconstruct and reconstruct, all of this sort of stuff. In Vue, you just set it to done, and then it re-renders. Everything within a reactive object, or within a ref if you put an object as a ref, everything in there is reactive, everything all the way down. It's like turtles all the way down, right? It's just everything's a reactive value, everything is wrapped in a proxy, you're good to go. So once we set our to-do as being done, it just updates the rendering of the thing that needs to be updated. We're not going to talk about handle submit. Like I said, that doesn't change. The next thing that's going to change is our return value. Remember how I said that this function only runs once at creation? And I said that that was important? That is because we're going to return a render function. So there we go. That's the change. It's a really big difference. And then the other thing that's going to change is that anywhere that we have show archive or show archived, we need to now make it show archive.value. Also, I don't have an update show archived function anymore, so we just do the assignment there. We just say, hey, show archived.value is going to equal not show archived.value, done. That is our toggle statement right there. The last thing that we're going to do is that we're going to update to our .value here. So everything is using .value. And we're still doing todos.filter here. So let's simplify that. And we just use filtered to-dos, and now we can just map over that. So there we go. This is now a Vue component. Ooh, great, thanks. Okay, so what have we learned? You can use JSX with Vue. That's the important one. That's the one that I want you all to leave here with, and if you ever hear anybody saying that you can't use Vue in JSX, correct them, please. I'm sick and tired of people saying that. Vue uses a reactive object for state. We have ref, we have reactive, but we also have computed. There's also other ones. There's shallow ref, shallow reactive. Like there's read-only stuff. It's great. You want to be immutable? Vue can do that. It's fantastic. You can make reactive computed values using computed, as I just said. And Vue returns a render function instead of just JSX. So that's the big difference if you are using syntax this way. Now then, what we have done here is that we have written something that we in the Vue community call an abomination and a sin against everything. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to skip a few steps, and we're going to go full-on Vue with this one. I had originally intended to put a style tag at the front to upset my friend Ari here. I did not. You're welcome. We'll get to that in a minute. If you remember it in our React component, we were importing the CSS at the top. Remember that that was a thing. We'll come back to that. Instead, now we are starting with a script tag, because in a Vue single file component, you have three sections. You have a script tag, you have a template tag, and you have a style tag. You can actually have multiple style tags. We won't go into that, but it's available to you. In our script tag, we're going to have essentially all of the same stuff as we were doing before. The main difference here that I want to point out, besides the script tag, is we are using, instead of passing a function, I am now passing an object with a setup method on it. So this is basically what we were doing before. We were just taking a shortcut by passing a function, but this functions exactly the same way as what we were doing before. So this is the quote-unquote correct Vue syntax for this. Everything inside of here stays exactly the same. None of these methods change. The only thing that really changes inside of this setup function is we are no longer returning a render function. We are now returning the values that we want available to us in our template. The Vue template compiler will compile our template into a render function for us. You can have an actual like render function on your Vue component. That is what we're doing with our template. We just write it differently than JSX. Our template looks very familiar. It looks very much like the JSX that we've had previously. There are a few differences though, so let's cover that. In Vue, we have a thing called directives. So directives are our template's way of being able to do things by specifying it on the DOM elements. So you'll notice here, instead of putting on submit, I have at submit. At, in this case, is a shorthand for the Vue directive v-on. V-on is basically a way of saying, hey, this is an event handler. When you see this event, handle it. So in our case, we are handling our submit event. If we wanted to do that in the long form, it would be v-on:submit. But we're doing it the short way, because I like the short way better. So that is our submit handler. You'll also notice I can use class. I don't have to use class name. We can use HTML attributes, because we're writing HTML and not some bastardized JavaScript thing. I'm not bitter. The next thing that we're going to talk about is our input, right? So we have that show archived thing. And you'll see here, once again, we have our change handler. You'll also notice I'm using show archived and not show archived.value. So with our template compiler, right, we're in template land at this point. It's going to do some compilation for us. So we let it. It's going to handle some stuff. It can tell, hey, show archived. I know what that is because it's being returned from our setup function. It's part of our data thing. I know that it's a ref. So anytime when the compiler is needing its value or setting its value, just add .value, right? It's going to help us a little bit. It's not going to make us do all of the extra long syntax. So I can do show archived equals not show archived. And then we have this weird statement here of :checked. This is another shorthand. So the other directive that you use all the time is v-bind. V-bind says this attribute is going to be bound to a value that I have specified somewhere else. So in our case, it is bound to a Boolean called show archived. So it'll be true. It'll either show up or not show up, depending on whether or not show archived is true. Cool. Next, we're going to look at our list. So we're no longer mapping over an array of objects. We have another directive here. We have v4. v4 is our way of looping over arrays and objects. You can put an object here. It'll give you the value. And if you put a comma next to it, it'll also give you the key. So you can do key value, and you can just iterate over that. You can also iterate over an array. If you were to put a comma here, it would give you the index number that you're at. Very useful sometimes. And so we're going to have v4 to do in filtered to dos. So we're getting that filtered to do list that we made previously as a computed value. And so that value will always be correct. And so we're only displaying the to dos in there. We also have a key. Similar to React, if you have something in a loop, you do still have to specify a key. It's not smart enough to just make something up for you. Yeah, so that's that. The next one is our button. Remember how we were optionally showing that button before? You click done, and once it's in the show archived list, it doesn't show up anymore. This is how we do that in Vue. We have a v-if directive. It does exactly what you think it does. You get a Boolean, and it goes like, if the Boolean is truthy, it displays it. If it's not truthy, it's not in the DOM at all. It's not a hidden thing. It is just removed from the DOM. And we have our click handler there. Now you'll notice in the click handler, I'm not giving it a function. I'm actually making a function call in there. And that's because within an event handler, and I think we did this earlier too, you don't have to give it a function. You can actually do whatever logic you want to in there, and it'll wrap it in a function and do it only when it's needed. The last thing I want to cover is that in JSX, you use a single set of curly brackets to interpolate a value into your JSX. In Vue, you just add another set of curly brackets, right? It's not that much different. The last thing I want to point out, So you remember how I said that import CSS thing at the top? And I went like, eh? In Vue, you can import CSS from somewhere else using a style tag with a source attribute. Not only that, I've added a scoped attribute. This is a scoped style. It only works on this component. I don't have to import another library. I don't have to go about like instantiating some object and then passing it as a string and then like remembering like what value do I need to put in. You just give it some CSS and it'll be like, I got you, don't worry about it. So yeah, there you go. That is our Vue single file component of the exact same thing that we made in React. You have now seen it in 3 different forms. And yeah, there you go. That is it. So let's recap really fast the important points of this talk so that you know what to leave with. One, React and Vue are far more similar than people lead you to believe. But in reality, you should use the tool that you like and that you are best with because you're going to be efficient with that. Like, I'm glad to have people learn new things, and you should. You should try out new things and learn about new things. But ultimately, like, if you want to use the thing that you're good at, do it. I do. And the final thing that I want to leave you with that is, I think, the most important point that I can make in this talk is JSX is a templating language, and anybody who says otherwise is just wrong. And so that is my talk. I would like to say thank you to Narando, who's up next. His talk is next, for helping me out with these slides. Cassidy Williams for looking over my React code and making sure that I wasn't doing anything stupid. I would like to thank my company for letting me come and do this. And I would also like to thank MagnoliaJS for letting me troll a room full of React developers in the early morning. So thank you, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I am here all the time, and I'm also in the chat. So there you go.